Unfortunately, this Yankees cap doesn't turn me invisible. So when it comes to Percy Jackson and the Olympians, it has not yet been greenlit for a season 2, but I'm pretty sure it will be greenlit for a season 2. I mean, I'm pretty sure Disney wants this to be their equivalent of the Harry Potter franchise, and I think Percy Jackson as a property has the potential to be as big as Harry Potter. The problem is that Percy Jackson and the Olympians season 1 isn't that great. Like, it's good. I liked it. I enjoyed it. As an adaptation of the book, it's pretty good, though it's not the one-to-one adaptation that was promised by Rick Riordan and the creators involved. If you want more of my detailed thoughts on season 1, you can watch my review up here. But one of the main things about Percy Jackson season 1 is that it is not the perfect season of television that a lot of book fans are claiming it to be. It's good, but it can be much, much, much better. And so today I'm going to list off my points as to how I would fix the Percy Jackson TV show from being a show that is good to being a show that is great and beloved by all. The first thing season 2 needs to do is that it needs to stop undercutting the tension of the story by having the characters know what's going to happen. One of the most annoying points of season 1 was how a lot of the time the trio would walk into a trap or a place and they'd know what was going to happen. That pattern started off in episode 3 where they walked into Auntie M's Garden Gnome Emporium and all of a sudden Annabeth's just like, Percy, we're in Medusa's lair. How does she know that? I don't know. In the book, none of them notice it because they're all dyslexic because they're demigods, and so when they see the name Auntie M's Garden Gnome Emporium, they don't really put 2 and 2 together. Also, at this point in the story, they've just escaped the exploding bus and are hungry and are tired, and they get lured in by Auntie M's hamburgers. In the show, they escape the bus, and then they just walk in there, and then they're being followed by the Fury, and then they see Medusa, and they're just like, oh, we'll chill with Medusa for a bit. Because. And they didn't just do this with Medusa, they did this with a lot of the major plot points. Episode 5 has this big set piece where Percy and Annabeth go into the Tunnel of Love to retrieve Ares' shield, but the difference between the book and the show is that the show all of a sudden makes it this big, epic, sacrificial moment where Percy has to sacrifice himself so they can get the shield, because if they don't, they won't get the shield, and oh no, if they don't get the shield, then Ares will be mad. It's so pointlessly overdramatic, like Percy sacrificed himself and it's just like, Annabeth, you're better than me, you can do this, you're gonna have to leave me behind. That wasn't the whole point of the subplot in the book. In the book, that subplot was supposed to be a fun little side quest where Percy and Annabeth and Grover go to get the shield, and then Percy and Annabeth form a stronger bond because Percy learns about her fear of spiders and protects her. It's supposed to be fun and comedic, but in the show it's like, oh no, Percy, you've got to sacrifice yourself because if you don't, then, oh no, everyone's gonna die, and it didn't need to be like that. Also, the show is called Percy Jackson, so why are they trying to do a Percy Jackson death fake out in the first season? That doesn't make any sense. Like, I know he's not going to die. I know there are more books in the series, so why are they trying to do this weird big death fake out? But the worst offender of them undercutting all the tension was the stuff in the Lotus Casino. In the show, the Lotus Casino is done so poorly, and I don't understand how. The trio go into the casino to find Hermes, and then all of a sudden Annabeth's just like, we're in the lair of the Lotus Eaters, don't eat the flowers, even though there aren't any flowers. And I might be mixing up the books and the films, but in the books, I don't think there are any flowers. And in the films, the flowers are this sort of like edible snack that you eat. But it doesn't matter whether or not the flowers are important or not, because in the show, there are no physical flowers, but also it doesn't matter, it's being pumped into the air, so it didn't really matter. Like, they walk into the casino knowing it's a trap, they spend time in the casino, and then it doesn't really matter that they know it's a trap because they still fall into the trap. Honestly, it's such a mess the way it's handled in the show. It doesn't make any sense. It's silly, it's stupid. And then another moment that isn't as significant, though it is quite annoying, is the fact that Percy discovers the Master Bolt before he's met Hades. In the sequence where he saves Grover from Tartarus, he saves Grover, all of a sudden he notices his backpack is heavier, and in the show, he opens his backpack and discovers the Master Bolt, but still goes in to see Hades. That doesn't work because in the book, Percy doesn't know he has the Master Bolt. All he knows is that his backpack is heavier. He goes in to see Hades, hoping that Hades will let his mother go out of goodwill because he doesn't have the bolt, but then Hades senses the energy of the bolt. Percy opens the backpack, discovers the bolt, and goes, wait, no, I didn't do that. I didn't know it was in there. Honestly, as inaccurate as the Lightning Thief film is, the film adapts it better than the show does, which I think is baffling considering Rick Riordan's dislike of those films, but it's also the showrunners and Rick Riordan were claiming that the show is going to be the faithful adaptation that fans have been clamoring for. But the massive problem with all these changes is that you cut away the tension of the story. A lot of these dangerous situations don't feel dangerous because a lot of the cautionary tales that Rick Riordan was trying to imbue in the story, they don't matter anymore. In the case of Medusa and Stranger Danger, nah, it's fine, she's gonna keep them safe from the Furies. In the case of don't eat strange food unless you know where it comes from, nah, it doesn't matter, it's being pumped into the air, forget about it doesn't matter. These changes are just baffling and bizarre. In many ways, it feels like you're replaying a video game, but you know what's going to happen, so you try to take a different path down that video game storyline. I honestly don't know who these changes are for, because they're clearly not for book fans, and they're definitely not for new audiences, because they don't even really explain the changes they've made. I swear to God, in season 2, when they go to Cersei Land, if they know Cersei's trap, what's the point? That genuinely, then what is the point of doing that subplot if they know what the trap is and they still go into the trap? But then also, seeing as how these characters are so well versed in Greek mythology, if they go to Cersei Land and they don't know the trap, then it makes them look like idiots. You see, the problem with trying to outsmart your original source material, it doesn't work. The next thing they need to do to fix season 2 is fix their exposition problem, because this show loves exposition. The characters in the show just love to talk about their lives, the gods, the history of the gods, the history of their gods and their parents. They just talk and talk and talk, and they keep going on about exposition that relates to the books, but then also it seems like they try to skip ahead to certain sections of the book so they can foreshadow it for later seasons, but it doesn't work half the time. But also, there are lots of moments where it seems like the writers of the show try to cram in as much book lore and book knowledge as they can, even though it feels very clunky and expositional. Like in the finale, there's a scene where Luke and Percy are sparring, and then Luke randomly just drops in the tidbit that Annabeth is scared of spiders. Why did he say that? I don't know. I'll bet it's because Annabeth is scared of spiders in the book. Yeah, I know. But the problem is that the show doesn't drop that in organically. Also, a funny thing with the exposition problem is that a lot of the dialogue is so overwritten at times that it seems like the young cast are really struggling and really trying to wrap their head around the lines and try to get out as much as they can in one breath, and in many ways it hinders some of their performances at times. Another problem that they need to fix in season 2 is some of the casting, because season 1 of the show has some very questionable casting with a lot of the characters. For example, Gabe and Hades, those two are the major standouts. They both feel incredibly miscast and do not portray the gravitas or the sincerity or the true nature of the character from the books. Another thing that season 2 needs to fix is the pacing issues. Season 1 of the show spends a lot of time on sequences that don't really need to be focused upon. For example, in the Underworld episode, there did not need to be a big action set piece with Cerberus. That was a waste of time. What I think the show should have spent more time on was, say, Percy's time at Camp Half-Blood, because I feel like Percy is barely in the camp. He's at camp for like one episode, and then in episode 3, they leave the camp within like the first minute. Like, yeah, sure, there are like 1 or 2 flashbacks with Percy at the camp, but overall, Percy barely spends any time in the camp, and in many ways, Camp Half-Blood is supposed to be Percy Jackson's Hogwarts. I honestly don't know what makes this camp so special. In the movie, we're barely in the camp, but when you're in the camp, it feels lived in, it feels adventurous, it feels awe-inspiring. Like in the first film, there's that guy that's like running on the suspended planks in the air. That's really cool. There's the bit where Percy keeps walking into the archery range and then Grove has to keep stopping the archers from shooting him. That's fun, that's nice little details. And even though the design is a bit too modern and it's a bit Ninja Warrior-esque, the obstacle course that Percy does in Sea of Monsters, yeah, that feels like a Camp Half-Blood thing. So in season 2, they have the opportunity to do that with the chariot race, but also show us the climbing wall with the lava that pours out of it. Show Percy doing some more training, make Percy feel like a living member of Camp Half-Blood, have Percy socialize with a lot of the other campers. And the final thing that I think season 2 needs to do is that it needs to fix its filmmaking and creative direction. When you look at season 1 visually is very, very bland. The cinematography is so boring, it's so flat. Where is the dynamicism? Where is the interesting lighting and the interesting camera movements? Why are a lot of the action scenes just handheld shaky cam? No, this should be choreographed, this should be grand, this should be epic. Percy Jackson is supposed to be based on Greek mythology, right? So why not look at the big grand epics of Hollywood? Look at the big classic epics like Jason and the Argonauts and Clash of the Titans. Heck, look at Troy, look at 300. Get some filmmaking sauce and pour it into season 2. Be more cinematic with the shot choices and the coverage. Don't just keep doing shot reverse shot. Do more interesting and dynamic things. Get better lighting, get better color grading. Bring in Alfonso Cuarón for all I care. Do something new and interesting and unique. Don't make Percy Jackson look very flat and very boring. When you look at the behind the scenes of season 1, they basically shot a majority of it on the volume, and you can kind of tell. Go outside, touch grass, and actually, like, you know, shoot on location. Granted, with season 2, it might be a little bit hard seeing as how they're meant to be adapting adapting Sea of Monsters, so you can't have them literally shoot out on the... I mean, you could actually. You look at the original Pirates of the Caribbean, they shot out on the ocean. They didn't shoot out very far. But, you know, put in a bit more effort. That's all I'm saying. Don't just rely on the volume so much. One of the reasons as to why shows like Stranger Things and Game of Thrones are so beloved and have become a worldwide phenomenon was because they were technically impressive. You watch Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and then you watch, say, an episode of Stranger Things Season 4, you can tell the difference, because Stranger Things just has a better overall creative direction. Percy Jackson wants to be the new Harry Potter, well then look at the Harry Potter films. Each one of those films had a very distinctive visual look. I mean, not to mention the fact they were also shot on film. I'm not saying you have to shoot on film, but you know, try and capture a cinematic look in camera. The thought process behind the filmmaking of Harry Potter wasn't content driven, it was cinema driven. They wanted to make pure cinema. They wanted to make a big epic cinematic story and bring the core of those books to life on the big screen. Percy Jackson needs to just do the same, but just on the smaller screen. It actually shocked me to discover that the budget per episode of Percy Jackson Season 1 was $15 million. Like, are you serious? I feel like I barely saw any of that money on screen. The show looks so cheap at times. So yeah, going into Percy Jackson Season 2, I think they need to get a different creative team behind the camera and give the show some more filmmaking sauce. Overall, I think Percy Jackson Season 2, if it's greenlit, could be really good. Sea of Monsters is a very fun, interesting story based on the Iliad. Wait, no, scratch that, it's based on the Odyssey. The set pieces in that book are really fun, and overall, Season 2 should be better than the Sea of Monsters film, because that film is, it's not great. It's not to say that Season 1 of the show was awful, it was a decent foundation, but it could have been much stronger. And I hope with Season 2 they keep building upon that foundation and they make it better and bigger, and overall it should be more entertaining and it should be a better overall story. But those are just my thoughts on how I would fix Percy Jackson and the Olympians for Season 2. What do you guys think? How do you think this show could be better? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, follow me on social media, all the good stuff. Until we meet again, see you guys next time.